Flashing back to Flashback. It's Amigos, episode 365. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Flashback.
Ooh.
Now, you know, in the United States, this was released as Flashback, The Quest for Identity.
Yeah.
Aaron, is a way of introducing some light banter into the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask you, have you found your true identity yet?
Well, unfortunately, I have, Boat. I'm afraid, yes. I have found it. As mundane and low-end as it is, this is my true identity. Kind of a tubby geek who likes old crap. But the good thing about getting old is that you slowly lose your memory. And so old things seem new again. So I could just sort of repeat the process in about 10 years. What about you? Have you found your true identity?
You know, I think that I have, and it's a mirror image of your own. So it's kind of weird how that worked out.
You know, speaking of flashbacks, like when you hear the word flashback, at least when I hear it, I think of hallucinogenic drugs, right?
Really?
Yeah, that's what I think of. I was reading this week that they are talking about using hallucinogenic mushrooms to treat the various
Ketamine.
disorders. Did you hear about this?
Well, it's been, I've read it in several sources as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because this is just another chink in the armor of what we were told in the 80s about all drugs are bad, all drugs will kill you all the time.
Yeah. I saw a thing on the news. They'd use hallucinogenic mushrooms to treat these guys who were career alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess this guy had a vision. He'd went on a vision quest, Boat, you know, and he had this vision of a whiskey bottle, and it was in the desert, and it slowly disintegrated, and that's how he knew it was over. And he has had a drink for like 7 years. I mean, it sounds kind of wacky. Well, there could be something to it.
I'm actually glad that we're talking about this because I was reading something about this in the Rob Report magazine that I get every month. And it's a magazine all about Rob O'Hara. And the gist of it is that it can cure all of these things. But if I was faced with this, there's something in the back of my mind that says, you know, what if I go all what's his name? Sid Barrett, you know, afterwards. I'm scared, you know, that sort of frightens me a little bit. Are my fears misplaced, do you think?
You know, I've got to tread lightly here, Boat. But let's just say I think you'd be okay. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, are you saying you have a friend that's tried it?
Let's just say I'm not an alcoholic, Boat. And we'll leave it at that. Let's get the hell out of here, Boat. News! Can we go to the news?
Okay.
That's what that means.
I didn't know if you wanted to segue or...
Don't leave me hanging.
All right, Aaron. You know, the time of the year has come when the largest Amiga-only festival in the United States has announced itself. AmiWest 2022 is right around the corner.
Oh, man.
It's hard to believe we're almost to October, but it's rolling around again, just like the Welch's grape juice in your mouth. So, this is, Aaron, this is going to be probably, you know, one of the biggest AmiWests of all time because of the crew that they've assembled here that are going to come and speak. RJ Michael is going to be involved. Of course, RJ, the mind behind the sort of workbench environment of the Amiga. They call it like the intuition system, I believe.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
He's a big deal. The mind behind that. Then the big guy, the keynote speaker, the banquet speaker, as they call him, is going to be Tim Jennison of NewTek fame. He is the creator, Aaron, of the video toaster.
Awesome.
A big deal.
Yeah. I'm telling you, when NewTek came around, I remember the first time I saw the Welcome to NewTek like demo or whatever. I mean, I know this is lost on you, but I was like, holy smokes. And then you started hearing about this video toaster. I can't tell you like how awesome it was that you're like, I mean, the thought of making TV shows in your own house. It's funny now because any schlub with a cell phone can just come up and they can make a little video. But the idea of video production and editing and processing in your home on your home computer was leagues beyond what you could imagine back in the day. So I'm sure this guy's got a zillion great tales to tell. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And listen, you need to register for Ami West and head out there if you're anywhere close to the West Coast, because there is no, unlike some events, the Tim Jennison talk. He is one on his rider. He does not allow himself to be recorded, and so the Tim Jennison talk will not be recorded in any way, shape, or form. If you want to listen to what he has to say, you need to be there in person.
How do you get that in your contract? You can't be recorded? What is he, a vampire?
You can do whatever you want if you are the accomplished engineer that created the video toaster, I guess.
What do you think about that? Does that strike you as weird?
It strikes me as a bit arrogant, and it strikes me as a guy that I probably don't want to talk to or interact with at any point.
Maybe he's afraid he'll say something that, now wait a minute, I'm going to back this up, because we don't want to say this, we don't want to bury this guy, but maybe he's afraid he'll tell a tale that like hoses another guy, and he don't want to hurt the guy's feelings. Now that's the good reason to do that.
It could be that, or it could be that this guy makes a living traveling around speaking at various events, and he doesn't want to lower his get rate by being recorded because he tells the same stories at every place he goes to.
Listen, that never stopped me.
Well, let's just say that Tim's going rate for speaking at an event probably a little higher than yours.
Well, that's true. I'm giving it away. It's funny. Rob just mentioned the guy who invented video recording hardware does not want to appear on video recording hardware. Good one, Flag.
Yeah, it's the ultimate irony.
I'm looking at this guest list here, Bo, for Ami West, which, by the way, we buried ourselves at Ami West a couple years ago with that little speech we gave, as I recall. But you've got Chris Hooper, Stefan Renier, and you've also got our good buddy Tinmark will be at this event, and I'm guessing probably the Pixel Gaiden boys, the American arm of that outfit, will probably be there. They were there the last couple times. Hopefully, Doug will be okay. Just a little shout out to our good buddy Doug. I read on Twitter that he had just went in the hospital to have something removed. But hopefully he's feeling good and he's out. If not now, then by the time this gets released. So get well soon, Doug. We miss you.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope you feel better, Doug, and we hope that you're back in business, making some great videos before you know it.
That's right. Well said, Bo.
All right. Aaron, let's move on, shall we? We've got kind of a light news week, but we do have some videos that popped up on YouTube that I thought were interesting. This first one is not anything we haven't seen before. This is just a video by Mr. Lurch's Things. It was a YouTube channel, but I just thought it was really well shot. There's tons of Amiga content on YouTube these days. We're spoiled for Amiga content, but every once in a while, something comes along that impresses me. And this is basically there's not a commentary. It just kind of shows you what this guy did. He took an Amiga 2000, he took it apart, he cleaned it, and he put it back together again. But because of the way the lighting I thought was really good, I thought the music was good, and the music is this band called the British IBM.
Oh,
now,
yeah,
I believe
we've heard them many times.
Yeah, Chris Folds, I believe, is close and personal friends with the British IBM. I think he's in like Flynn with those guys.
Yeah,
so
they do good stuff. I've liked a lot of their tunes. They get around too. Yeah. They're well known. Where did you find this at, Bo? Just random fooling around.
Yeah, if there's one thing I know how to do well, it's randomly fool around on YouTube.
Look at the background here. If you're watching it at home, you can see it. If you're listening, I'm looking in this background here. He's got a couple of TRS-80 Model 1 or 3s. He's got some Macs back there. It looks like he's got a Coleco Atom. It looks like he's got a some sort of old Commodore back there.
Yeah, he's got a CPC 464.
Yeah, he does. I didn't even see that. Yeah. Good call, Boat. And he's got some sort of potato-headed parrot, which is kind of...
I believe that's a potato head wearing a Darth Vader mask.
Is that what that is?
I think that's what that is.
Good. So, hey, listen, watch the guy just to see that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So L. Curtis Boyle in the chat says that he believes that Mr. Lurch is Australian.
Very good.
You can take that to the bank.
Thank you, L.
All right, Aaron. Finally, Finally, we still got a couple more. We got Neil, our good buddy Neil, our boy. He's back with another Commodore Amiga 1000 video where he's restoring this thing. This is part three, and this involves the disassembly of the keyboard and the cleaning of the muck in between the keys. Now, the A1000 keyboard is really a very well, some would say, over-designed piece of hardware in that you can completely disassemble it to a much larger degree than you can many other keyboards. And so Neil takes this thing completely apart, cleans it up, reassembles it, and then does some work on the case. I have not completely watched all of this yet, but it looks like he goes into some of the news articles that led up to the release of the A500, and so he kind of goes into, you know, how the Amiga 1000 was slowly kind of pushed out the door with a cheaper and you know, better computer, which is the way of all computers since the beginning of time.
You know, I watched this right when it came out, and I was appalled. Because every time I watch someone clean a 1000, I look over at my 1000, which looks like double crap. And I'm like, man, and I don't want to tear down that keyboard. And despite what you said, Boat, I watched a video because when you get down to the bottom of the Amiga 1000 keyboard, the micro switches are kind of like tough to get out. They're like soldered in. Our good buddy Chris Edwards did a video where he actually repaired a couple of these. It ain't no walk in the park, if you know what I'm saying. It's tough work. In fact, he's the only person I've ever seen do it. I'm sure others have done it, but he recorded himself doing it. So I urge you, if you're going to try that, to look down his playlist to see if you can find the one episode where he actually does this. I've got keys on mine that are just, everyone else's Amiga 1000 keyboard seem okay. My keyboard, I think they dipped it in molasses. I didn't let a pet roll on it. I mean, it's jacked up, brother. And
well,
so,
this is the keyboard that you got from the armed man in St. Albans, right?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, it was worth it. It was worth risking my life. I love having the 1000. And I will say, Neil puts a gimmick in here. This is something I thought about doing, where you let you have an external drive be your drive zero. You know, that shtick. That's a good angle, you know, for these things. And then he routes it to a drive that, you know, just like a USB floppy drive, that old shtick. And then in between the cleaning phases here, he goes into the precipitous fall of the Amiga 1000. And one thing watching this video will show you, and Robbie sort of touched this too back then, the Amiga 1000, it's tough. Listen, it was a miracle piece of hardware, but it's tough to call it a success. In fact, I wouldn't call it a success, and it wasn't the computer's fault. It was because the Commodore, even back in those days, were idiots. And Neil goes into the bits where they're skipping shows, and they're saying they've got enough distributors. We don't want any more. We got plenty. And Atari is like, oh, we'll take those distributors. You know, dumb crap like that. Because if you're a distributor or someone wanting to sell the Amiga, and they're like, we don't need you. That's really their way of saying, we're dumb. Please go to our competitor. And they did. They went right to them. So, yeah, this is another one of those eye-opening pieces. There's never a video about Commodore where you're like, they did the right thing. They're great. They're all make you think these guys are idiots.
You never come away thinking that about the management.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, Chris Edwards in the chat, Aaron, has offered to fix your Commodore, your A1000 keyboard for free.
Well, thank you.
Send it to
I
him.
appreciate that, Chris. But see, I've got a policy, and the policy is I'm not going to pass on to someone else the thing that I should do myself because I'm a lazy jerk. And so at some point, I'm going to get your video out. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to do it myself. And then once I screw it up, that's when you get it. So it'll be, you got 2 generations of me fooling with it to go. But yeah, I really endorse this. Good video from Neil. Good closing to the A1000 series.
Speaking of Chris Edwards, let's move on to our final video of the week, where we see him live and not live, but recorded and in person.
Yeah.
He's starting this one out without the hat, so you know it's serious from the get-go.
He's dead tired too in this. That's when he's at his hobo-ish best. That's what I like about him. Much like this, when you work at home and like it's just late and things aren't working right, it's just like you turn to crap. That's the best part. That's the best part to see. I love being in the audience for that. And
now, this is interesting. You've watched this.
Yeah.
The title of this video is the Amiga 4000T Quick Pack 060 CD-ROM. A bunch more numbers, and then glass and RAM. Now, Aaron, tell me, did the Amiga 4000 come with a glass front, or is this some sort of an aftermarket thing?
No. I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't remember that part. I remember everything else, including the issue he had with trying to get a. He was trying to use one CD-ROM that he couldn't get to quite work right, so he had to switch to another one. He's in here, plexiglass. He says, but I don't. If it had plexiglass, I don't know about it. This is an interesting video again because I had one of these, and I remember. I remember this is long ago, but way before the Amigos. One of these came into my possession, and I remember opening it up, and I looked in it, and I looked at I put the cover back on. I'm like, we gotta sell this thing. I'm out. I'm out. I'd been inside the 500 or the 1000, but this was a whole new kettle of fish here. I was like, I'm done with this. But hey, it's good stuff. Hey, it looks like a good computer. He does a little software experimentation here at the end that I like. Good stuff. You know, like I said, you guys know it. I like his stuff because he reminds me. He's the everyman repairman. And by the way, he's super talented at repair too, and entertaining guy. So give that a check out. I also should mention. Which I'm assuming this is still up on his channel. He did a live stream this week, which I caught the end of it, but it looked like a lot of fun. He had a good crowd in there. So if you're in, and I think was answering questions and stuff. So if you're in that sort of thing, flip over to his channel and check out the live stream, Bode.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to do it for this week's Amiga news.
I think that's all we got this week on the news, Bode.
Let's kick it off and talk about some Flashback.
Well, we're going to flashback one more scene before we do that.
Listen, I did that on purpose because I knew you were going to say that. Bam!
So what does that mean? You're some kind of mind reader? I'd work on your own mind and work on your own mind. Yeah.
The time has arrived. Retro Rewind, Aaron. Let's talk about it.
If they could only send something to make you remember promos, we'd be laughing. Listen, I think Frank's in the house today. Thanks for coming in, Frank. Let's talk about Retro Rewind. What is it? Well, it's a North American-based company that sells you anything you could need or want for your Commodore machines. Now, listen, we just talked about how Commodore dropped the ball. And you think to yourself, a company so inept, surely you can't get parts of those old crazy machines. Oh, yes, you can. You can get parts, you can get service, and you can expand upon the shortcomings that Commodore left in these machines to make them super duper machines. For example, they released something called the Amiga 600. This thing was a world-class dud when it came out back in the day. I mean, nobody wanted to touch this thing with a 10-foot clown pole. Nowadays, it's a coveted item because you got to have it. Why? Because you can put an accelerator in this thing and make it the king dong of Amigas. Guess where you get that accelerator, Boat? You get it right here at RetroRewind.ca. On top of selling peripherals, flash cartridges and the like, Frank will also provide you world-class service on your classic machines. If you don't want to get in there and tinker with something, send it up to Frank. Frank is a master repairer with decades of experience at the top level. He has equipment you never heard of to take care of this business. We saw it firsthand at Boat Fest. Frank and his staff know what they're doing, and they get it done quick, efficiently, and at a great price, don't they, Boat?
That's right. And speaking of great prices, you can fill your cart full of goodies. Use the promo code Amigos10 before you check out. You can save 10% off your entire order, no matter if you're getting a transit card or a full recap service. 10% off your order with that promo code Amigos10. We appreciate Retro Rewind, and we thank them for being a sponsor of Amigos.
Now,
let's do it. Hit it.
pretty creepy, Boat. Creepy song there at the beginning of that.
Haunting.
So this week we are going for it with a little game we call Flashback. You know, this is our monthly flashback of our own show where we cover things that got looked at in the first 50 shows we did, those wacky shows. And I was telling Boat that I actually went back and to check out our show on this game, and I was stunned to see that it was actually one of the very first episodes that we used the green screen on and taped. So there's actually, it's weird. That was weird. 2016 Boat. It's funny.
Yeah, a long time ago.
One thing I want to mention before I get too far, and it's like you were covering the very first Amiga Ireland, and you were like, "Boy, wouldn't it be nice to go to Ireland? I've never been." And so, lo and behold, you
Oh,
eventually
wow.
made it.
Who would have known?
Isn't that kind of
Yeah.
crazy? So, Flashback released on the Amiga in '93 on 4 discs, and was amazingly released, published by U.S. Gold. This is at the top tier of the U.S. Gold
That's for
catalog.
sure.
And developed by an outfit called Delphine Studios out of the Big F, France.
Yeah, and it's very serendipitous, Aaron, that we're covering this game this week, seeing that you just came off a week of talking about games from the Big F on ARG Presents.
We sure did. It is timely. We'll get to that a little bit later, but yeah, we talked about games from France, and so it's neat. It is kind of neat. It's funny how these things work. I wonder if somebody somewhere thinks, "Oh, it's all a cunning plan." It's not a cunning plan. It's funny how things work. This game. Delphine, we talked about them on that episode, and Delphine sort of they do top tier work, I would say, but if you want to look at it that way, probably most famous for either this game or Out of This World, I would say, where they're 2 pinnacle games. But they did some other really good stuff, including Cruise for a Corpse, Future Wars, which you've covered both those, and the Stealth Affair, or in America, it was the 007 James Bond game that they relabeled. I can't remember the exact name. The graphics, the concept for this game, and the designer of this game was a guy named Paul Cossette. He was responsible for several of the games I just mentioned, Cruise for Corpse, Future Wars, and he did a game called the Bio Challenge. But I'd say this would probably, when you think about that guy, this is the game that you would think about. The cast, I'm not going to go through everyone that worked on this, but it was a lot of people. I mean, they had a staff. This isn't something that just some bedroom coders slapped out. This was a full-on effort. And amazingly works on the ECS OCS, so there's no AGA here either. You can get your hate out for another week on that. In terms of
all right, don't mind if I do.
No, I'm cutting you off. This was converted to almost every conceivable item on Earth that could run it.
I wouldn't say that.
Listen, I'm going to run down to a few of these. All right, the 3DO, the Archimedes, the Mac, the Jag. I couldn't believe this got a Jag port.
I've heard the Jag port is actually, aside from the Amiga, the next best port of this game.
That's crazy. It got put on the FM Towns family, the NEC PC-98, the SNES, of course the DOS version, the CDI boat, if you can believe that one. What do you think of that? The CDI boat.
This was the time when people were actually thinking that the CDI was going to be something in the market. So it did in the early '90s it did get quite a few ports of these sorts of games.
It showed them, didn't it? Good luck playing that on that joystick that shipped with the CDI. That thing sucked. Of course, you also had the Mega Drive / Genesis port, and it's got a Mega CD / Sega CD port. And stuff that's new since we covered this the first time. This got a highly touted Xbox Live port that had been souped up. There's also a Dreamcast version of this that was some kind of homebrew where they basically took all the great music from the Amiga and all the great cutscenes from the DOS version of this and melded them into one game for the Dreamcast. That's kind of neat.
That's cool.
And there was a Steam version of this that used some sort of souped up new engine. I've heard it's double garbage. I mean, double garbage.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
And then there's an upcoming game in this series, which we'll get to at the end of the look. We'll talk about that. I should mention, I looked just for fun. I was wondering what this thing sold for. According to what I found, and then your mileage may vary, but in the UK, this originally sold at a price of £25 for this one. But does that sound about right to you?
Yeah. I'd say that's the going rate of a top tier title back then.
So before we get into the game proper, just a smidgen of history, Bode, on this game, because it does have kind of a colorful background. So Delphine Studios had a pretty good rep back in the day, and US Gold was like, listen, we got a new game license we want you guys to put a game with. And the game license was The Godfather, right? things. And so, which, by the way, have you I know you hate violence. Have you ever seen The Godfather, any of the Godfather movies?
I have. Oddly enough, I have seen, because The Godfather, everybody talks about it as one of the great movies of all time.
Yeah.
And so I stomached the violence to watch it. And I will say it is a very good film.
The third one, though, man, holy.
Not so good.
No, and that was no good. But those first two are gold. And U.S. Gold, actually. So U.S. Gold was like, listen, let's get this cooking. And so Paul Cousette was like, yep, okay, sounds good. He started cranking something up. And then they worked on this thing, and eventually when U.S. Gold looked at it, they're like, listen, this, because they wanted to make a Godfather game, but it was the Godfather of the future. Like, say, future Godfather.
Really?
Well, I mean, listen.
How would it be the Godfather at all, then?
You could make a futuristic Godfather.
Isn't the futuristic Godfather just a mafia movie?
Well, one would wonder how the license for the Godfather would tie into that. I mean, there's
holographic Marlon Brando.
Listen, even U.S. Gold was balking at this. Like, listen, we don't know what you've got going here. But so they were like, listen, you don't need the Godfather license for this, but the game looks good. Let's go with this. And so they tweaked it quite a bit, and ultimately came up with Flashback, and this is admittedly, Cousin said they were inspired by a lot of movies of the science fiction movies at the time, and you could see the influence on a lot of these stuff like Total Recall and Running Man and Terminator was one they mentioned. And unlike other games we've played that said they're based on stuff, this is actually based on stuff, not just saying it to look cool. You know the game I'm talking about. And so this game eventually was finished and was released to much effect, much praise. This game used a rotoscoping technique, which was really used by the studio with great effectiveness in Out of This World. And was refined even further in this game, and really has its origins way back at one of my favorite games, Prince of Persia. And so
that's where that was the root of this.
That's right. So all these games have that similar realistic look, realistic running and leaping, characters that look like actual humans. The movement as you would expect it. The lead character, this is named Conrad, according to what stuff that I read, and you never know with this kind of praise stuff. Conrad, over the course of the whole game, all the stuff that he does has 1,000 different like animated frames, like of all the different stuff he does. He does a ton of stuff.
I can see that. Because there's 24 frames in a second. So.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, he does a lot. They have him doing a bunch of different moves. He's got a lot more moves, let's say, than like the Prince of Persia guy or the Out of This World guy. He does a lot more stuff. He's also got a gun, shields. He does other stuff like that. So, in case you're wondering what the game is in terms of the background of the game, and this is the briefest of brief backgrounds, but then we're gonna get into the game proper. It takes place in 2142. You play Conrad B. Hart, one of the Hart Foundation, I think. And you basically begin this movie, you see a guy running off. There's a cutscene where he's being chased. He's on like the space motorcycle. And much like Lionheart, he gets shot down over a jungle. I think someone horked a gimmick here, and it couldn't have been Lionheart. But this poor guy gets shot down over a jungle area and has to survive using his athleticness and his brain power. When he lands, he doesn't know who he is. And so the subtitle for this is, at least in the States, was Flashback, The Quest for Identity, as you mentioned in the opening. Once you land in the jungle, you can get this thing called a holocube that will give you, basically, it's a recording of yourself saying, you need to survive, you need to get to New Washington, and that's when the plot really takes off. And I'm not going to get into the whole plot, but it involves alien shapeshifters that are called morphs, and this guy's quest to basically take them down and then get back to Earth. Which, I'm not going to give away the ending either because it's got a pretty good, neat ending in it as well. This game is tied together with cutscenes, and the bill on this thing back in the day this was called the CD game on a cartridge. Boat. Now, okay. I don't. In '93. How old were you in '93, Boat? You're
12.
12. Did this thing resonate at all with you back in those days? It came out from the SNES.
I remember when this came out. I might have even rented it, but I did not enjoy it. But I did play this one back in the day. I'm pretty sure.
I see. Now, so let's get to the game proper. And we've played this game on stream. We've played it. We've streamed it on the channel. We've played it at Amigathons. We're pretty familiar with it. And my goal this week was to sit down and really give this thing the college try. Bo, just as in terms of presentation, the music, the opening, what does this thing do for you?
Much like Out of This World, this is maybe even more than Out of This World. I would say this is the most cinematic game on the Amiga, full stop, that I've ever played. I mean, everything from the music to the settings, to the variety of settings, to the story, to the dialogue, to the animation, everything about it. It just screams. This is like they're trying to make a film. They're trying to make this video game a film.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's done very cinematically, which is sort of our hot button on the Amiga because we're both big Cinemaware fans. I like when developers make an effort to pull you in. And listen, we've played a lot of games on every system that we've tried that were sort of half-assed, basically, or they or not. They did some things we liked, some things we didn't. This is a fleshed out. This is a fleshed out environment that's got all the nooks and crannies covered. When you even in the opening in the lush greenery, the way it's rendered, this thing took a different approach to making graphics, and it gave them the ability to have even finer detail than you would normally expect. And they did a great job. Everything looks nice, and they've got nice sound effects. Of course, the movements there. And I guess really, when you do a rotoscoping game, you sort of have to really go all in on the backgrounds because you've gone so far in on the actual movement of the characters, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I don't think they really had much of a choice with that. So once the game begins, let's go ahead and just talk about the controls, Bo. Let's just go ahead and drag that out in the open. Because this is one of those games where the controls, to a certain degree, are a big part of the game.
So
give us the rundown.
The way this game works is like there's an invisible grid that your player is always a part of. So you are moving through this environment, and when you push the joystick one time, it's always going to go the same distance. And when you run, you're always going to run the exact same distance. The game is success at this game depends on your ability and your willingness to come to grips with and become familiar and excel at this control system. This is nothing new. This started way back on Prince of Persia. That's really this control system has its roots in Prince of Persia. It's it's one of those things where in a game like Prince of Persia, you have help. The help comes in the way that the levels are designed, because you have these floor segments. They're almost like concrete slabs that let you line things up. In Flashback, maybe what they were in, and also with Another World, I think that they were assuming that everybody played Prince of Persia and they were kind of ready for the next challenge. They kind of assumed that people were used to this control system and were ready for something a little bit more challenging out of the gate. And so you really have to think about this game not like a platformer per se, but almost like a game like Manic Miner, where you have to calculate your moves. Every single move that you make on a particular level, really you have to plan it out ahead of time. There's no such thing as like emergent platforming dynamics in gameplay on Flashback. You're not going to be able to do things right your first time through. I'd say 90% of the time, if not higher. This is a puzzle. This is a puzzle platforming game that's very, very cinematic. And the puzzle is not a brain thinking puzzle. It's a controls puzzle. So if you have to ask yourself, do I want a game that the challenge of the game comes from me having to figure out the controls, and then once I do that, I'll be able to do everything else? Or does spending, possibly weeks or months figuring out just how this thing controls and how to apply these controls to each and every screen on this game, that when you go all the way through it, takes you over 2.5 hours to beat. Do I want to spend the time allotted to me on this earth doing that?
That's a deep thought, Boat. You know, just to give people, if you haven't played this, and I'm sure a lot of you have, but just for the folks that haven't tried it or haven't played it for a while, the game, of course, you've got your Amiga joystick there. But by the way, you can also play this with keyboard, and I wouldn't, but you could. But what you've got here is a game that gives you 2-button support, and it's
okay. Well, let's talk about what 2-button support means.
Okay.
2-button support doesn't mean that you get any more control over your character. It's not like up to jump becomes button to jump.
It's literally another button.
All it does is gives you one less thing to reach over to the keyboard to do.
Right.
That's all it does.
Well, I mean, it's a big help.
It's not. It's not a big help.
I thought it helped me because you can use to draw your gun with. The other button's your action button. Listen, I know you're not a fan of the controls in this game, and let's face facts. I'm not a fan of the controls either. This is a game I bought this game years ago.
Let me ask you a question before we go further. Before I forget, you're not a fan of the controls of this game.
No,
but you are a huge fan of Prince of Persia.
Yes.
So for me, I find these control systems to be similar. What makes them different for you?
Well, Prince of Persia is a simpler game. Is part of it. Also, Prince of Persia, you don't the gun, the shield, that stuff. It's not a big. There's no inventory to worry about on there. There's no like this game has got all the rolling. It's just a different game. Don't get me wrong. Prince of Persia's I like Prince of Persia, but even that game, as much as I like it, the controls in a lot of ways are the game. And I mean that your ability to control the prince is how far you're going to get. And then once you figure out how to control them, then you actually could try beating the game. The perils in the game, and this game is similar. Some people are quite comfortable with the controls, and I mean, you always talk about. I compare this to Lionheart in a certain way. I'm going to compare it again, not control wise, but you know how Lionheart's sword, like you've never liked how he swung the sword because it's awkward. It's an awkward control method. And this is a similar method. Now, once you master it, you can get to where you're pretty good at it. And it's the same with this game. It's just a matter of whether you've got the tenacity to pull it off.
One of the great things about doing these second look programs is that we can draw upon the experience of our YouTube commenters that commented when we first posted this episode. And I want to share a comment from Marj1980.
Okay.
This Marj says, "I've never had a problem controlling Flashback." And then the last sentence says, "It does take practice, and it took me a few good years to be able to play it naturally."
There you go.
Okay. If it takes you a few years to be able to control your character naturally, you have had a problem controlling Flashback, and the problem is not you. The problem is the game.
You know, the funny thing about a game like this, because, I mean, okay, is the game a tour de force visually? Absolutely. Is the audio good? Yes.
No question.
I've watched the story. The story's very clever. I like the puzzles. I like every part of this game.
Yeah.
Except one. And the part that I don't like is the part I have to endure to play the other cool stuff. Again, this game is vastly popular. And it's funny, like I said, I played this a lot this week. I got my 2-button stick out, the whole shtick, right? And I did okay. But the frustrating thing about this game is when you just roll to your death, or you don't stop in time, or something like that, and you die. Those are the worst deaths, because you're like, oh, geez, I feel like I'm fighting the controller, and it makes me want to quit every time. And I forced myself to. I actually got past a couple levels, with some save states and whatnot. But I mean, but it was fighting them.
Because I didn't play this with save states because I wanted the pure experience. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And with this game, especially it's the second time we looked at it, I wanted to say, okay, if I'm going to sit down and give this game 2 or 3 hours, how far can I get in it playing it au naturel? Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't get far at all. And I became more and more frustrated.
I can tell.
And at the end, I mean, and I called you.
Yeah.
And I ranted about how upset and how much I hated our freaking selection committee for making us play this game. Okay.
Yeah,
I was irate. I've calmed down. I've taken I've gotten over it. But this game, and it's not just the controls, but it's also the one-hit kills. It's very Dragon's Lair-y. Like in the first stage,
when you get the shield, it's not, you can get
well,
first.
in the first stage, when there are those, like, there are things that will kill you in one shot. I'm not talking about bullets. I'm talking about, like, when you walk over
Like that gas,
those green thing, yeah, the gas
or the
and stuff
little
like
sparks,
that.
yeah.
And there's no way of knowing that that's going to kill you until you have to figure it out. And again, it's freaking Dragon's Lair. And when you die, you don't get multiple lives. There's no checkpoints. You're back to the beginning of the stage. Back to the beginning of the stage. And that is no... And now, again, I realize we're talking about an older game, and older games were different. But for me, looking at this game in 2022, being like, man, can I recommend somebody go out that's never played this? Will they enjoy it? My answer is a resounding no.
Well, there are mid-level checkpoints.
Not that I got to.
Yeah, well, you didn't get very far, because they do have them. They are there, so I can vouch for.
I mean, here's the thing: if that doesn't help you when you get to a part where you die. Like if it literally takes you like 5 or 10 minutes just to get back to where you were, because again, you're coming to grips with the controls on this, and it's not easy to get back to where you were. It's not just like a hop, skip, and a jump. And the thing that makes it even more frustrating is that you can look at the screen and you can say, if this game just controlled normally, I could do what I wanted to do with no problem.
Yeah.
It's the controls that make this difficult. And that's so frustrating. It's so frustrating as a game player to have that feeling.
It would be awesome. I thought about this so many times. If this had the controls of like Mario, I'd be killing it. I would love that.
Yeah. Or Contra, you know?
Something like something more arcadey, you know?
Anything other than this would have been an improvement. If this game would have had the controls of Top Banana, it would have been better.
Well, the thing is, I mean, when you look at the control scheme, right? I mean, here's the thing. You've got an inventory, okay? You've got the ability to pick stuff up and to use stuff, and plus the stuff you can do with the gun. You can shoot, you can roll and aim. You can also whack. You can pistol whip a guy. You know, there's stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of moves you can do. And so
I will say this: if I beat Prince of Persia and I beat Another World, I would have welcomed a game like this, because this game is the logical evolution of games that are like that.
Yeah.
Because if you'd mastered the controls to the extent that you could beat both those games, you're going to want a roll move. You're going to want to manage an inventory. You're going to want to take things to the next level. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I think your average player today is not going to have mastered those games, and that's a big difference. In 1992, if you were a computer gamer, you would have had at least passing familiarity with Prince of Persia on some system.
I agree. I mean, listen, well said. This is a game that is, you're right, it's a natural progression of those other games. And I think I will say, looking at this with modern eyes, I mean, because it's still, let me tell you, it holds up in every way for me but the controls. But but the thing is, that hasn't changed. It's funny, I went back and when I watched our old show, which I think was episode 48, I thought to myself, I bet I put this game over because I didn't want to look like a chump. But like nothing changed. Like our conversation now, you were less angry when we did that episode, but generally it was pretty much the exact same conversation that we're having now. It's just not being able to come to grips with the controls of a game like this. And if the thing is, you were talking about Top Banana. If you can't come to the grips with it in Top Banana, who cares? It's crap. It makes it worse that this game looks awesome. It's got elements that I love. I'm like, oh man. And when you talked about the progression from Prince of Persia, like I'd say I'm a pretty good hand at Prince of Persia. I'm not great, but I can get halfway okay in Another World or Out of This World. And this is a bridge too far. I'm like you, and unlike you, I use save states to. In fact, you told me to, and I was like, "You're right." I use save states to beat the band because I didn't want to get frustrated and give up, and that's how I ended up getting as far as I did. I would save every so often. That's how I knew there were save points, because I would save every so often. I wanted to get to New Washington. I wanted to get to places I hadn't seen before, and do stuff, and it was fun. And I eventually I got the controls down to the point where, well, listen, that's not true. I never got comfortable enough with the controls where I didn't just randomly die because I hit the wrong button. And when you can't get any past that, you're done. You're done, son. So that's where we stand.
I will say there are multiple levels of difficulty
Yeah.
that you can choose from in this game.
They add enemies.
Yeah, and it's basically just the addition of extra enemies.
Yeah,
So.
I put it on the dumbest possible guy
Mhm.
that I can find. With all that said, this game got over quite nicely back in the day and sold very well when it was released to much acclaim, I might add, and was quite popular. Eventually, they did release a sequel for this. The sequel, what happened on this sequel? But have you ever played it?
No, in fact, we were talking about it on the Discord. I was not even aware that it existed until fairly recently.
Yeah, the sequel was called Fade to Black. It was released on the PC and the PlayStation. I don't think I may have tried it once or twice, but I don't remember ever playing it. And this game ends on sort of like I don't want to say a cliffhanger, but it ends in a way they were definitely setting up for a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you not wanting to spoil the game, and I don't want to spoil it either. But I'll say, I watched the full playthrough of this. I watched it at multiple X speed because it's a very, very long game, and there are repetitive sections. But the overall story arc of this game, what you have to do, what your character goes through, and then the way the game ends, like the final scene. I mean, again, it was not hyperbole when I said this might be the most cinematic, fully realized game on the Amiga. I mean, it's just great.
I mean, listen, in terms of the presentation, it's at the tippity top. There was actually a third game planned, Boat, called Flashback Legends, and Delphine went out of business before they could release it, which was in 2002. And then there have been rumored games. We talked about some of the sequels and whatnot, but get this. This is as timely as today's headlines. They just released a preview on YouTube in June for Flashback 2, which was announced by Microids last year, and it's going to be released this winter for all the major consoles and the PC. I mean, the video for it, of course, they can't just show you the gameplay. They've got to put a bunch of crazy effects in there and stuff, but the gameplay looked 2D-ish with some, I'm sure there's some pseudo 3D. It's hard to tell exactly. I know there was a part where there was some sort of driving or flying or motorcycle part of it where you're flying around. So they've taken some license with it, but it might be interesting. I don't know much about that outfit. So it's hard to say if it's going to be any good or not, but it might be okay. Would you play a second one if it had maybe better controls?
I'd play this one if it had better controls.
I can't imagine them releasing something like this on like the Switch or the Game Boy and it getting over. I mean, on the Xbox. I mean, you think modern players could adapt to this sort of play style?
No. If they release it, it'll look something like Shadow Complex, which will be great. And it'll have the same aesthetic. It'll have the great story and everything, but it'll control like a real game.
So, I mean, again, I don't want to bury the controls because
I want to.
Well, but the thing is, they were doing that. This game requires elements of control that necessitated them to a certain degree to have unusual controls. That doesn't mean it had to be bad, but
Well, I understand. Like, I understand from the perspective that you'd be able to finish this game probably in 30 minutes if you could actually control your character. But is that a good thing?
Well, there you go. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the mindset was. But hey, they sold a ton of these, and this game, like I said, get this. According to results from various publications, they'd sold 750,000 copies of this by 1995, and gosh, it's probably well over a million.
Well, I mean, this got console release. This got a Super Nintendo release. It got a Genesis release. So
this is.
I mean,
Mega in '94. Mega placed this game at 8th on their top Mega Drive games of all time. In '97, this was 92 in the EGM 100 best games of all time. A Polish publication named this the 17th best Amiga game, which I think that's. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's low because we're sort of burying it, but yeah, I can see where it would be higher. Retro Gamer in 2004 named it the 65th top game. The list goes on and on. It's over.
Listen, when you talk about computer games, not console games, games that are the prettiest are always going to score highest. Computer gamers at their core are graphic snobs. And so whenever you have a Shadow of the Beast or you have a Flashback, you're always going to get more points by looking great and having great cutscenes than having good gameplay.
You sound like
That's
a
just a fact.
console kid with a chip on his shoulder to me, Boat.
It's a fact.
I don't agree with
Prove me
that.
wrong.
I don't agree with
Prove me
that.
wrong.
There's plenty of good games that don't have great graphics that still got over.
Not on these lists. Not on these top 10 lists or top 100 lists.
Listen, stuff like Lemmings and stuff gets over all the time, and it didn't have great graphics. Come on, you know, or something like Sensible Soccer. Those things always score high, and they weren't like tour de force of graphics. You're not going to find Shadow of the Beast in the top 10 of anybody's top 100 games.
You will. Yeah, you will.
No
Just
way.
Look at any top 10 Amiga list games. That's
you
on
find
the internet.
any top 10 list with Shadow of the Beast 1 on it. You go find it. I'll
look it up right now.
Don't look
Keep
right
talking.
now. Look later. So, review-wise, you may be stunned to believe, but this is probably, of all the games we've ever looked at, if we've ever looked at one that was better reviewed, I don't know what it is. The Lemon people give this an 8.76. I'm not going to go down through these, but the lowest score that Lemon has recorded for this thing, I believe, is an 87. And the scores are almost all in the 90s. The average score for this game is 92. It was a monster in the magazines, and that would explain why it was, placed so highly amongst all these all-time lists.
Yeah. And this is a game you don't forget. When you play it, it's so evocative, the scenery and everything, and the opening cutscenes and the opening scenes and everything. It's a game that you don't forget, and it's a game that sticks in your mind. And so obviously people are gonna, people respond well to that sort of thing. And again, I'm taking this from a perspective of a person that never got to grips with elementary school, which is Prince of Persia, let alone middle school and other worlds. So again, it's hard to get myself in that mindset when I'm not of that mindset.
And even with the controls such as they were, I just want a couple more things before we move on to the Discord reviews. Take the joystick movements and all this crap and have to go back and forth to your inventory. And I thought the inventory usage was a little nutty. It could have been better. But even stuff like, I hated when you would roll up on a guy and you couldn't shoot him and you couldn't pistol whip him. And you're right, you're on him. So what? He couldn't shoot you, and that happened to me a lot. So it's not like this thing is without flaw. There are things that could be fixed. Also, the fact that it's a flip screen game. This game, because it's tough to jump from screen to screen. That also was not my favorite because there were a lot of cheap deaths in this. As you roll on the screen, you've got to be quick. You can't just meander through or just falling in the spots, And when the controls are fighting you, and then you fall 1,000 stories, and then you land in a place where there's a bunch of guys, you're boned. The controls could screw you that way too. So again, it wasn't like this. Just aside from the fact that we didn't like the controls, it wasn't like there was nothing else wrong with it. There are little problems with it that make it less enjoyable.
But I mean, everything gets traced back to the controls because that's what a video game is. Everything gets traced back to the controls.
How did the what was the Discord vibe, Boat?
Well, I can tell you this: the Discord is not going to be too happy with me because the Discord loves this game. Lord Stoop says, "Handsome, fiendish, compelling, addictive." A 16-bit finest hour in a game everyone interested in 16-bit era games should try. Maybe you won't love it as much as I do, but you might. The remake is iffy. The sequels are poor. Stick with the classic, 10 out of 10.
Wow.
David Hearn Ryder writes, Flashback was a cracker, featuring stunning graphics with rotoscoped animation and varied, colorful backdrops that pulled you into the game world. Part platform, part action, part puzzle, and part adventure. It ticked all the boxes. The variation in the brilliantly designed levels will knock your socks off even today. A landmark game and an icon, 9.5 out of 10. Jocko6502 writes, 30 years ago I completed this. This time I made it back to Earth. This game is tough. I was pleased to find Flashback is still enjoyable. It's clunky in places, but it still holds up. The most annoying thing was having to stop and select various keys to use. I have fond memories of this game, and I've owned it for a number of platforms, but never really played them much. The Amiga will always be the true original. Great graphics, audio, and cutscenes long before that was a thing. Plus a dash of borrowed plots from They Live, Total Recall, and Running Man. Flashback corrected a lot of the problems with Another World, and for me, Flashback is the true king of rotoscoped game action. A real Amiga classic, 9 out of 10. And finally, Alien Breeder writes, Flashback, it really was the, quote, godfather of games back in the day.
Get it?
This was another game I had back in 1992 and was blown away by the graphics and rotoscope movements. It was like Another World, but with more modern gameplay graphics. It was a showcase game that I never got anywhere with. Even playing it now, I still can't get very far, but if I rated games on my ability to progress, they would all receive very low scores. Flashback comes with great cinematics, with a beautiful world, and even today it still looks and plays great. The controls take a little getting used to, and that seems to be the case in all versions, but offers 2-button control. Natively, it does require some keyboard functions, but that doesn't really hurt it, and much of that can be gamepad mapped on emulated systems. Flashback was released on many systems at the time and later. The Amiga was really the flagship on this one. The Nintendo looked just as good, but seemed to run at a slower speed. The Genesis played well, but didn't look quite as good. The CDI was small for some reason. The Windows version that came a little later and the Jaguar version seemed to be very good as well. Overall, given the nice graphics, sound, and atmosphere, I give Flashback 878 top bananas out of 1,000.
Very good. I should, before we fold the tents on this, I was surprised to read that the contrary to, and this is, you can look this up, but I read this 3 or 4 different places, and I thought I would include it in our discussion. This game wasn't originally done on the Amiga. This was actually programmed. This is, again, I had always heard it was, but from what I've read, this was actually first started on the Mega Drive. But the Mega Drive was actually released later than the Amiga version. So I don't know what, you could read into that what you will and do your own research. That's what I read. I was kind of surprised to read that. So if you look at these side by side, the Genesis version, or Mega Drive, if you will, is eerily similar in its look to the Amiga version. Having played both of these, there's not a whole lot of a difference. Like I said, most people, there's a good chance that a goodly amount of people played Flashback on the Amiga with a Genesis stick. Ironically, have you tried the Mega Drive version of this, Bo?
I did. I tried both the Genesis version and the Super Nintendo version, and yeah, I'll say that the Genesis version is pretty. I mean, I found them to be almost identical. The Super Nintendo version you want to avoid. It seems to run pretty slow. Although maybe it had to do with, maybe I had wrong settings. Maybe I was playing in PAL or something, but it didn't seem to run as fast and it just didn't look as good. The aspect ratio looked weird. So stick with the Genesis if you're on a console. Of course, if you're on a computer, play the Amiga version.
Yeah, I agree with that. I looked this up on eBay. It's funny. I mentioned on our very first show or the very first time we looked at this on whatever it was, episode 48 or 49, that I had owned this and I had sold it to get Christmas money. I distinctly remember doing this. I remember when I bought this game because it looked so awesome. I couldn't wait to play it. Then I sucked at it, and I didn't get played that much by me. And I think I sold this for $50. And at the time when we did the first look at this, I said that that's about what they were going for. They've went up since then, since 2016. I saw people attempting to get between $118 and $200 US for a box copy of this. I saw some sell for $56, $59, $70. So I would say you're probably going to be looking somewhere in that $70 range. You can get the re-release for about $20 if you look around in the UK. Of course, this is all in the UK. And if you just want the discs, you can get those for around $14, Bode. So yeah, this game sort of makes me sad, but it is what it is, Bode. It's funny, we have a shared opinion on this one for sure.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, let's leave Flashback and see what's been going on the old YouTube channel this week.
All right, we had some interesting releases this week, Bode. Let's talk about something that you put out here. Carve Up versus City Connection. This is in your new series, Attack of the Clones. Why don't you talk us through it?
So on Attack of the Clones, I take a look at an Amiga clone version and its original arcade counterpart. And Carve Up is it incorporates the same sort of street painting mechanic of City Connection, but you pilot a car that looks like the car from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Remember that anthropomorphic car?
Yes. What was that? It had a name. I can't remember what it was.
It was like Speedy the Cab or something
Yeah, he
like
does
that.
he looks just like him. Yeah.
That's why I said that. It's amazing. This game is not great. I don't think it's nearly as good as City Connection. But City Connection didn't get put out for the Amiga. So if you wanted to paint some streets on a 2D environment, you can do that with Carve Up. And you can check out my full review on the old YouTube channel.
I think I may have played Carve Up on a stream one time. I do recall this. So
Benny is his name. Thank you,
Benny,
chat. Benny is, yeah.
Very good, Bo. Very good. Next on the docket, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's myself and the Brent. This week we did on ARG, we did a Games from France. I believe this was Chris Fold's suggestion, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. And we looked at some game designers and game studios from France. And then we picked our own games. I picked a game called The Fifth Axis, although it's got a French title. It was Le Five Im Axe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sort of a, I don't know how you would describe it, sort of a run around, avoid
pits. Looks like
an
Impossible Mission ripoff to me.
Well, did you hear the episode already?
Yeah, of course I did.
Smarty.
I listened to every episode.
Yeah, it's not. But it's not bad. It's okay. I can control it pretty good. And
it's totally understandable why people said that, though, because the way your guy runs, that awkward gait, that's right out of Impossible Mission.
It looks good, though, and it's got multiple levels. We played it on the the Thompson MO5, but I would recommend this, or might be the MO7. I recommend this on the C64. The second stage of this on the C64 is some of the best parallax scrolling I've ever seen on the C64. It's unbelievable, Boat. I was stunned. The Brent went ahead and picked a game that we actually played on this show a few times, which was called the Alpha Wave or Continuum, where you bounce around. I think the first time me and you played this was on Amigathon, one of the early ones, and it was a lot of fun. And Brent sort of buried it. I was like, man, come on, I thought this was really good. Brent didn't seem to good. Brent's argument on this is sort of like your argument for Flashback. He didn't like the way it controlled. He thought it was. Of course, he also said he thought this game was too bare bone. It was more like a tech demo. But I thought it was a pretty fun game, and I really enjoyed it. And I've played it on stream a couple of times too. So anyway, if you're into games from France, check us out. ARG presents 228. I'll let you talk about this, Boat. This is the Coco show where we were dreading this one, where we look at color robot battle.
There are games that have bad controls, and there are games with no control. Get ready, because Color Robot Battle is coming up the lane. So, Color Robot Battle is a game where you program a robot using sort of a simple programming language, and then you program your opposing robot. Ideally, you're doing this with a buddy, and then letting the robots fight it out in the arena. That is most of the game. This game is
it's a nonstop thrill ride, Boat.
Well, as you can tell from the video, there's a lot of times, unless you program your robots just right, it's even hard to get your robots to fire on each other. They'll just kind of meander about, going about their business. And these robots, they take a lot of hits to get worn down too. And so a lot of the robot battles that you're going to want to have, you're going to want to be doing something else at the time. Perhaps looking for a different game to play.
Watching these bots fight, it's like if you turned on Battle Bots on TV, but you were mostly blind, and you'd taken a bunch of ether, just huffed a can of ether, where you're just, everything's in super slow motion, and then you're ready to experience Color Robot Battle. That much said, I did enjoy this in a sick way, because it's a great way to sort of learn a programming language for a kid. Yeah, again, this is another game you have to kind of put yourself in the time frame.
Sure. Sure.
Although I will say, when I played this in the time frame, I looked at it one time and never played it again. So, but I guess I want the target audience for Color Robot Battle. But yeah, with that kind of billing, you've got to watch the show. You can hear Boat bury it in his full voice. And then lastly, Boat, we might as well talk about this. It's just your video for Rock and Roll Clams. You want to explain what this is?
So we're getting ready to talk about Rock and Roll Clams on the Atari ST show. And I don't know if you knew this, but the ST, not the easiest thing in the world to emulate all the time.
No.
And so in the on the YouTube scene, is not a lot of video of Rock and Roll Clams. There is a short one that is mostly just the title screen, and the title music was just a little bit of gameplay.
Yeah, music's great.
So I took it upon myself to record myself an award-winning performance of the first 2.5 levels of Rock and Roll Clams. You can check that out if you are super curious about the game before we talk about it and its eventual release towards the end of this month.
We recommend you watch this video in its entirety to fully prepare yourself for our look at Rock and Roll Clams. But do you find it odd that there's not every ST game represented very well in the YouTube area? I mean, it surprises me that we come across this. This is the second time we've had to make a video for one of these.
It doesn't surprise me because, like I said, the ST emulation scene is nowhere near as developed as the one for the Amiga.
There you go.
And so that's the long and short of it. Luckily, we have the Mister. The Mister makes everything better.
And nothing new on the stream team this week. We got caught in between cycles, but we'll have something coming out tomorrow morning. Look for it on the Amigos stream team. That's all we got, Bo.
All right. Well, Aaron, last week, Patreon Song Challenge was Witchy Woman by the Eagles.
Yeah, that was the Paul.
That's right. That's right. And so we want to congratulate Petzel and Packbelly for the correct answers. Congratulations. I almost said you guys are the kings of the castle. Stealing Rob's gimmick.
You don't want to do that.
You guys are the Patreon Song winners. So this week we've got a new one, and I'm going to give it to you right now. If you know the answer, and if you would like to be part of the Patreon Song Challenge, head on over to patreon.com/Amigos podcast. I guess if you like the show and you want to support us, that's a good reason to join up too. You can be part of the Patreon Song and get access to our Discord and put a couple bucks in our pocket to play some more Amiga games. Of course, you don't have to pay us to play Amiga games. We'll do it anyway. At least some of them. So here we go. This is the new Patreon Song Challenge for this week. John at AmigosPodcast.com. Here we go.
Don't say it.
Oh, I do want to say first, we do have a new patron, Daniel James Miller. Welcome aboard. Here we go. Daniel James Miller, Match by Explorer, Ingrid, Edo, Robot, Dr. Pack, Billy, Robbing David, Howard, Price, Jazz Dog, Art, Hyper, Bumface, Pooh Hands, Chris Edwards, Pretzel Alarm, Albert Kemp, We Like What We Like, Mr. Cheap Bitter Price, Herman V, Wanderly Chesum, Mark Richardson, David Hearn, Ram OK, Rom OK, David Terrace, Jude Carlos, Matthew Mobius, The Phantom Magnus, Seth Yates, Alistair Fiend, David Z, George Ozansky, The Amiga Show, Daniel Crabtree, Super Family King, Crazy Loomis, William Ventuscar, Heavy Systems, Frag Lord, Mark Byland, Olaf Hope, Alien Breeder, Dave Losser, Raptor, Cowboy Boy, Daniel Williams, Luke Hudson, Bomb 6, The Bass, Frodo NL, Soul Incisor, Tech Mage, Jurgen, Mr. Cola, Bernard Lucas, Jerry Dennington, Zorg Love, Reflection, Simon Lech, boom, Cap and Crispy, Kilobytes and Caffeine, Gary Heather, boom. Free Lunch, Kate Fox, David Pickford, Cameron Armstrong, boom. Andy Jones, Lobsterminator, 10-minute Amiga Retrocast, Bernard Quinn, RMC, Tim, Drew, Joseph Harrison, Kyle Letter, Rob O'Hara, Matthew Laramore, Andy Craig, Sean Zoho, Bark Pit Rollin', Burke and Monks, Joe the Zombie, Leif Killan, Alan Kebab, Checo, Taylor Lord, John Marshall, Matthew Perrone, Creepy Dead Boy, Figure CTZ, The Slow North, Stefan Sorgard Mortensen, Edvin Helland, Christopher Hassel, Reyes Foles, Lawrence Giroux, Graham Vipke, Adam Battersby O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Gary Heck, Paul Harrington, Duncan Styles, Taves from the Crib, Josh Nat and Bradley, Jonas Rulo, THT, Eric Nelson, Daniel Binkson, Darren Coles, Jason Warnes, Pixels at Dawn, and Kjolbjorn Barman.
I got that one. I don't know that one.
All right.
I mean, it was horrible, but I don't know what it was.
All right. So we also want to thank our Twitch subscribers. These are the fine folks that watch us each and every Friday live on Twitch around 5 p.m. We got RetroRewind.ca, Wide World of Retro, Retro Jerry, TSI Matt, Macintosh Librarian, Doc, Krabs MTG, Explorer, Petzel, K9Z9 Zap, Amiga Live, Texas Foosballer, Memories of a Spectrum Gamer, Oil of Hope, Akutake, Blue Train, Luminato 8, Picard 2010, Back to 8-Bit with Hermsky, Brother Bill, Jigglebox, Mr. Rocket, Uber Scuba Diver, Thurso Bard, John Marshall 3, Still Adolescing, Amy Steph, Brock 101, Hayward Heel, Steve Burtz, Pints and Amiga, Great Al G, T and Nefarious, Mash Pie, M. Cron, Real Retro Dude, Rob O'Hara, Buck Owens, Haldrith, Beach Bum 7, Mitsuyama, Eeyore 4077, and Holy Guacamole.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, Aaron. What are we going to be playing?
Have a look, Boat. Ooh, the Lost Patrol, Boat.
Yeah, I've heard good things about this one, Aaron. I think it's going to be a good one.
Did we try this on an Amigathon at some point?
As far as I know, we have not, but I could be wrong. We played a lot of games on Amiga.
We were really dazed.
Yeah, and confused.
It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I've heard good things about this one.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all so much for watching. We will see you again next week. Until then, adios.